Good morning, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I am Meg Manke. I'm the COO and Head of Training for Group Int'l. This is a continuation of the Elevate Rapid Cities virtual trainings. We're glad you're here today. This is a series of trainings that are being offered to cover everything from health insurance to mental health to marketing to business resources. If you've missed a training, you can find previous webinars on Elevate Rapid Cities YouTube channel. And you can view upcoming webinars on the Elevate Rapid City Facebook page. And if you have any questions about that beyond what I've shared with you, I think Rachel Day is the gal to talk to about that at Elevate Rapid City. So you can always get a hold of Rachel Day at Elevate Rapid City if you have any other questions. So this morning, we're going to talk a little bit about change. Anybody got that going on? Oh yes, we all do. So want to talk about it kind of in the context of chaos and how people deal with chaos and change and how they're processing it, because that's what actually makes life a little bit messy for us, whether it's at work or even in our family, which now both of those things are crashing together. People all deal with change a little bit differently. And when we can't really understand their perspective, it's hard for us to get our arms around why they're doing what they're doing. So we're going to talk through kind of 4 different types of people and how they handle change. And then I'll give you 2 big tips as a leader, a colleague, a parent, a spouse, a brother, sister, a pet owner, I don't care, whatever you are, 2 tips for helping people who are in a state of chaos or a state of change that they're unfamiliar with. So the interesting thing about change is that when change is put into your life, like, I don't know, let's say a global pandemic, when change is put into your life, you can't really do anything about that. And that makes you feel frustrated or anxious or like you need to do something from the onset. You're kind of wheels spinning, whether they're one going this way, one going this way, both going forward or both going backward and retreating. We're some sort of magical thing where you only have 2 wheels. So apparently you can stand up by yourself on 2 wheels. But so no matter which way your wheels are going, because of that change, you're moving instantly because something is different. So you feel like you have to pivot and move. That causes some anxiety, even for people who are chaos tolerant. That causes some anxiety. And so what we have to really focus on are what are the things that we can manage? What are the things that we can control? And the only thing really at the end of the day, we'll talk more about this later, but the only thing at the end of the day are our actions, how we act, right? So even if someone else is dealing with change and chaos at work and someone in our family is, we can only, and we want them to act differently, we can only manage what we do, right? And that's kind of the first lesson of understanding ourselves in chaos. No matter what your culture type might be, no matter what your Gallup Strengths Finders, top strength is, you have to know that no matter what, you can only control your actions. That is the most important thing to know. So that's the number 1 thing to know. I'm a lister, which drives Rachel a little bit nuts. Rachel Headley, not Rachel Day, but I'm always creating lists. So we're going to talk through the 4 different kind of culture types that live and exist in our world. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about sort of their strength, the good, the bad, and the good, the bad, and the whatever the name is of this thing. I don't even remember. The good, the bad, and the ugly. The good will be obviously a strength, something you can lean on those people for. The bad will be something that some undue heartache they might cause unintentionally within your organization. And the ugly is kind of what are they probably going through right now with all the coronavirus stuff and remote work and basically upending their whole life. So we'll start with the people who are team driven and chaos tolerant. We named these things aptly so they were easy for people to think about. So as you can imagine, team-driven people like to collaborate, work in teams, work in groups, and chaos tolerant means that they actually handle chaos pretty well. They might prefer a little bit of it in their lives, and they which is different from order tolerant people. Not everybody believes me, but it's very different. So if you're chaos tolerant, you might actually, one of your, well, kind of the bad of being a fixer, or what we call team driven and chaos tolerant, is that if there's not enough excitement, enough stuff going on, not enough meetings, not enough interaction with people, not enough free thinking, new challenges, you might create one just because you're bored. You don't know you're doing this, fixer, but you are. You're creating new challenges, which typically causes some sort of change. And typically, as we just discussed, change in someone's life instantly, no matter what, causes a little bit of like, what do we got to do now? And so that can be something that is hard for people in your organization to process. If you find yourself, maybe there's a solution to a problem, or maybe you've put together a big project package with a whole bunch of people. Oh, my computer's doing weird things. With a whole bunch of people, and it's all done and ready to go, all packaged up. And then you're like, oh, wait, I thought of this other thing. Well, that's not because, for some people in your team, they're like, oh my gosh, we already figured it out. Could you please stop fixing something that doesn't need fixing? Some people are thinking that. Some people are like, ooh, that's a good idea. I like it. We're supposed to stop working on this. We have a deadline coming up. You're not trying to be a thorn in anyone's side. You're just interested in the next big thing. And so that's why you're thinking about the next big thing. And that can actually cause a problem for some people because you're kind of operating outside of the guidelines. So that can be kind of the challenge of someone who's team driven and chaos tolerant. The strength is you really are good at getting a group of people together and being, keep moving forward thinking, and getting a solution to a problem quickly, right? So where some people really struggle to be visionary or think about, gosh, what can we do that we aren't doing right now? That's your thing. That's your jam. You're excited to solve problems and be really creative about it and innovative and listen to people and invite new ideas. The struggle that these people are probably having right now, are folks that are team driven and chaos tolerant. They're not getting any interaction with people. And these folks, I don't just mean like, of course, they might be on a Zoom call once a day, or maybe 3 a day, or whatever it is, but they're used to, I talked about this in my last webinar, if you're used to being around people 40 hours a week, and then you only see people 5 hours a week for maybe a 1-hour call, that's 35 hours of people time that our team friends are missing out on. And so the way you can check in on someone who's team driven and chaos tolerant, if they're kind of showing up for you that way in your mind, the way you really can check in on them is say, hey, actually call them, and maybe call them once a day or text them, any kind of engagement, interaction. In the absence of the ability to sit down and have coffee, or actually sit down and have a meeting or whatever it is, collaborate in the conference room, any kind of communication is like water. It's like an oasis for them. They love that. So if you see some folks who are team driven and chaos tolerant, they're acting kind of weird, like maybe they seem disengaged and normally they're not, or you're kind of your go-to person who can just quick fix anything, and they're just a little hands off or acting strange, it's probably because they're not getting enough interaction. So you might think, okay, well, I'm just going to let them be. And of course, there's some psychological sense to that. But after you give them a day to kind of sort their head out, give them a new challenge. Call them, text them, send them something funny, re-engage them. That will reignite the fire for them. So then we'll move to, before I move on, if you will, please put questions in the chat. So I don't like to just talk to myself. I talk to myself all the time. So when I get to talk to a group of people, I like to actually engage with them. So as we're going along, if you have questions, put them in the chat, not the Q&A. Oh, there's one in here though. Let me look at this. Oh, Joe's, yes, you can hear me. So not the Q&A, put them in the chat. I'll find them in either place, but just so they're all in one place. Put them in the chat, and I'll address those at the end. You have to ask questions. That's like my rule, because I don't like to sit here and talk to 25, 26 people, including myself, for all this time, and then nobody asks me any questions. I know I'm good, but I'm not that good at explaining everything. So questions in the chat. All right, next person or next group of people we'll talk about are folks who are team driven, but they're order tolerant. So they're different than those team driven, chaos tolerant people, because they like to have a framework around things. They like to have agendas. They like to understand what's going on. These folks have a lot of questions, but they might not ask them because that team driven sort of kicks in, and then they don't want to take too long in the meeting. They don't want to upset someone. If they don't understand something in a meeting, they'll think, well, I really have a question about that still, but I'll just wait and ask it later because I don't want to hold everyone up, right? That's that team driven, but they have those questions. They're order tolerant. So those folks, the thing that can be really hard for those folks, we call them stabilizers, is they can be influenced really easily by others because they're always looking for outside data to validate and structure and provide a framework in their head. They need the framework. They can't just live in all this chaos. And they really rely on their teammates around them to sort of build what that framework looks like. So they can be easily influenced by others to do things that maybe they don't even want to do. So that can be kind of hard for our folks who are team driven and order tolerant. The thing that's amazing about these people is that they are like an anchor, like a rock, because once they understand a change and they get comfortable with the chaos, there's a framework around the chaos. They might not love what's going on. Like right now, nobody loves what's going on. But once they kind of get their head around what's happening, they really, really, they have this magic power where they can let other people lean on them for comfort and for clarity about the situation. That's because they're team driven and they're order tolerant. So they lean into that team and they really are good at saying, here are the details that we have. Here are the things that we know about what's going on. The ugly for our team driven, order tolerant friends right now is the uncertainty. Because they're order tolerant and they don't like the feeling of not knowing how to help people, how to help themselves. When's this thing going to break? What's going to come next? They struggle with that uncertainty. That makes them feel uneasy. And so they might be calling everybody they can think of. You might see some information from them that's, from some who knows website, and you're like, is this real? Do we believe this article? And they go, I don't know, I just read it and I thought it was really interesting. And you're like, well, it says that, ducks get coronavirus now. Why does that even matter? Well, I don't know. So they're seeking information so much that sometimes they might find something that's irrelevant or maybe seemingly illogical because they're just really grasping at straws. The way you can help these people is to make sure they stay engaged, because again, they're team driven. Make sure you keep them engaged, and also good information is important for these people. Send them good information. If you have someone who's a stabilizer on your team and they kind of start to fizzle or freak out, or you're thinking, what is that? That seems like they have a strange, attitude about things. Probably they're seeking information. They're having just a crummy day where they just feel really uncertain. So sharing good information with them, reassuring them on the things that you can reassure them about is really important for stabilizers. Okay, so then we're going to go to the self-driven side of the house, self-driven and chaos tolerant. So self-driven means these folks can collaborate in a group, but they don't really care for that. They like to think about things, make decisions on their own, and then they go to the group and talk about, what options do we have. Chaos tolerant, so they're north of the line, as we say, in our graph, and they like an opportunity to be free thinking. They don't like to be told what to do, not big fans of control. I fall into this category. You're welcome, Shelley. And so these people they can kind of come across like they don't care. That's kind of the bad of an independent. They seem like they don't really care about what's going on, or what's going on with other people. They're interested in getting the work done, and their own agenda / not being controlled. And so sometimes that comes across as, why don't you care? Do you see what's going on around here? Like, people are freaking out. Why are you acting like it's not a big deal? Well, it's not that they don't care. It's just that they're chaos tolerant and they're self-driven. So thinking about what's happening for other people, and thinking about putting order around that, not a priority for those folks. So that is, that's kind of their struggle. They can seem like they don't care about what's going on. The thing that's awesome for these folks, these independents, is they're super curious and they're not scared to forge ahead and go where other people are not going, right? Because they're self-driven and chaos tolerant. They're like, yes, sure, let's try it. So these folks are really great. If you're working on pivoting something in your business, these folks are great to turn to say, hey, Jim, I want you to take a hold of this idea and spin up some information and let me know what you think. Let's talk about it again in 3 days. We'd like to stand up a new platform or record stuff in videos or whatever the thing, automate some processes that we've had in the past that aren't automated. So that's what your independents will be great for. And then what they're probably struggling with the most right now is really understanding the control thing. I will speak for myself. I couldn't understand. I like to be home. I like to work in my home office. I think it's wonderful here, especially since I painted it and hung my picture. But I was finding when this stuff all started to kind of shake out, settle in 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was like, man, I got to get out of here. I cannot be at home anymore. And I couldn't figure out why that was. Well, it was because that was the rule, right? And so before, the rule in our business is everybody goes to the office at least 3 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, so we can get the team things done, whatever. And then Thursday, Friday, you can work from home. Well, the rules changed where you have to stay home. And I'm like, oh, you think so? I don't want to stay home. I got to go somewhere. So you can kind of have opposite reactions from what you normally would have if you're in a state of change that you didn't start and you're not really adjusted to or comfortable with yet. So having that amount of rules, I guess, or control put on these folks who are self-driven and chaos tolerant, they don't love that. Also really understanding why people are freaking out. So that kind of going back to that, it seems like they don't care. It's not that they don't care. It's that independents just don't really, they understand everybody's sort of freaked out, but they're very logical creatures. So once they get past the freak outedness, because they're self-driven, they don't rely on taking information in from other people to develop their plan. Then they're like, all right, well, here's the deal. We all stay home until we're not supposed to stay home anymore, or we work, and then if we have to work, then we work and we wash our clothes and wash our hands and whatever all the rules are. Okay, fine. I don't like it, but fine. And why are you still freaking out? So that for an independent, maybe saying, people are processing this in different ways. And so it's important to give some people time to process it the way they need to, because they might not be where you're at with this, self-driven, chaos tolerant person. Last one is self-driven and order tolerant. So self-driven, not necessarily into teams or collaborating or making decisions together. And order tolerant, meaning they like to have a framework, have lots of data points, lots of information around a change and around chaos. So the not so great thing about these folks, our organizers, is they can come across as being very curt. Different really than don't care, in that like curt, like, not only do I not care, you're bugging me, right? And that is not at all their intention, but they come across that way because they're searching data. They're looking for data. They don't need a team to talk about that with. They will find the information. They will satisfy whatever questions they have, mostly on their own. And then they're done. And then they move on. In our Kurtz change transition model, each one of these different types actually moves through it at a different way and different rates, depending on their culture type and their work preferences. So organizers need all the information up front. They don't need any people to talk to unless they have to talk to someone to get the information. And so that makes them look like they're kind of a jerk, but they're not. That's just, human interaction is not a priority for these folks. The thing that is amazing about our self-driven, order-tolerant folks is that they can provide incredible amounts of order where there is chaos. So they can take a whole big chaotic mess that's chaos people look at and they're like, oh man, this is going to be awesome, but I have no idea how we're ever going to do this, organize this, pull this off, move on from this spot. They can just it's like magic. They take it and they put it in their brain, and then it just spins out this whole processes and policies and all this logic around what seemed very messy. It's like imagine this. If it's like somebody folding your laundry for you, right? You get all the clothes out of the dryer and they smell good and they're fresh and they're clean. You're so excited to wear them again. But that getting from the laundry basket into your drawer or into your closet seems impossible. You can tell what my least favorite chore is. Seems impossible. But this person takes all the laundry out of the basket when it's warm and fresh and not wrinkled. And they fold it and they put it away and they hang it up wherever it's got to go. And then it's like a miracle. That is the magic of our self-driven, order-tolerant friends. So while they are curt, they can organize the heck out of things, and that is super helpful, even when there's chaos, and especially when there's chaos. What they're probably really struggling with right now is a lack of routine. So these folks aren't necessarily team-driven. They don't need a lot of team, but they do like to have a routine and kind of know what's going to happen next. The other thing I thought of with these people is that, and I think everybody's struggling with this, but there's a lack of options, right? They're, as part of their routine, maybe they went and worked out in the morning and then they, took a shower, went to the office, did lunch at a certain time. Maybe they did lunch a certain day of the month or day of the week with a specific person. They can't do that anymore. Then after maybe on Friday, they went and had drinks with their close friends, can't do that anymore. So these folks are probably really missing out on that routine, which has been drastically modified by a lack of options. And so making sure that they have, sort of a process or listening, maybe they have a process, just listening to it. So hey, Julie, how do you organize your day? How are you keeping yourself motivated and going through things? And are you still talking to your friends? Do you still make time, to go to the gym or whatever? So helping them sort of by engaging them about their schedule or agenda that they would like to have, or their routine, will help them, will really help them feel like you're engaging them in a way that matters to them. Mindless chit chat for those people, not oh, how's your Eastern? They're they'll be cordial and they'll say, it was great, thank you. Oh, well, our kids this and that, unless they're your good best friend. They don't want to talk about that. They want to talk about what are the routine, what are the facts, just the facts, ma'am, and move on. Okay, so each one of these types, as I said, manage change a little bit differently. So it's important to know a little bit about that and how they go through the Kurtz change transition model. I'm not going to make time to talk about that today, but I am going to share with you two things that you can do for sure. Two things that you can help people with. Number one is teach people about the spheres of control and influence. I think you can Google it and find it. So basically this is referencing back to the beginning when I was talking about all you can manage are your own actions. And if you scope things down for people when they're anxious and overwhelmed about chaos, if you scope things down into All you worry about right now are the things you can control. What can you control? Which is very, very little. And then once they kind of get that, maybe if somebody's super stressed out, sit them down and have them write it out. Like, what can you control? I can control what I eat. I can control my activities outside of work. I can control my sleep. I can control how much water I drink. There's not much when you really think about it. So what can you control, have complete control over? And then what can you influence? You know, maybe you can influence your kid's day and help them build an agenda or something that maybe then they're not tearing around or screaming or whatever kids are doing. Maybe you can influence the way you meet with your teammates. You can't control it, but you can influence it by saying certain times work better for you, or certain days work better, or, you know, you need more of this and less of that. And then everything else is outside of control and outside of influence. That's it. You can't do anything about those things. You can't change the rate at which coronavirus is spreading. You can't change the fact that you can't see your family right now and your friends. You can't change the fact that you're not going for sushi tonight. You can't change any of those things. You can't even influence those things. You could get takeout. So there is that. So it's really important, because those are the things, those big, huge things, the stuff that's on the news, it's all spinning around. That's what freaks us out. And it freaks us out because we know we can't do anything about it. And our poor brain is an emotional creature. And so it says, well, God, I should be freaked out. Well, if you can't do anything about it, why be freaked out about it? You have to help your brain by creating spheres of control and influence. So that's number one. That's number one thing you can do to help your folks deal with chaos. Number two thing, and maybe this is more number one than number two. I don't know. You have to do these in tandem, I guess. Figure out what someone's perspective is. It is not the same as yours. You know, I'm independent with some organizer tendencies. My business partner, Rachel, is a fixer. We don't see the world the same way. And because we know that, we can understand each other and our perspectives and respect and appreciate those differences and say, hey, I notice you're trying to fix something that's not broken. Tell me why you're doing that. Like, let me help you not do that. Or if there's a problem, I'll help you fix it. For me, if I need space, she recognizes that and says, you know what, why don't you just work from the office at home today? Maybe I'll drop by your house later if we need to talk about things, or I'll call you. So really understanding someone's perspective, why they're doing the things they're doing when they're in a state of change or chaos, will really do a couple things for you. One, it helps you understand them so you can actually help them. And two, it helps them trust you because you're genuinely interested in what's important to them, not why it's important to you that they be productive. Okay, so those are the two things. If you want to know more about this, we've actually designed some special materials specific to business continuity. It's called the Business Continuity Blueprint. And it's for this really special, unprecedented time during the coronavirus crisis, pandemic. And so you can find that out on our website, rosegroupintl.com. And if you go to the products page, it's the very first one, I think, that pops up, Business Continuity Blueprint. So if you want more information about that, you can go to our website and find that out. Okay, so that is what I had to talk to you about today. I see there are questions. Good job, Helen. Does the current chaos change your culture type? What influence does stress have on types? Okay, I'm gonna just read through these to myself very quietly. Yes. Okay, so the question that we have here is, does the current chaos change your culture type? What influence does stress have on types? This is a great question. Most of the time, we we can kind of tell who someone is, what culture type they are, based on the way they react in change or when they're stressed out. But sometimes we have, and if somebody's in a really high state of stress, we see people having opposite reactions from what their normal culture type tendencies would be. So that becomes a little trickier. And this happens a lot with clients that we work with, because they say, well, Susie does this one certain thing, which is really crazy. And then Susie will take the assessment, and then Susie will end up, so let's say whatever Susie's doing is seems like she's being a fixer, but then she takes the assessment and she's actually a stabilizer. And then the company's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. That's not what Susie does. A lot of times when we're super, super stressed out, we act way outside of our normal, right? Which is why everybody's like, gets the question mark above their head. They're like, what in the hell is wrong with Susie? Like, what are you doing? You're not being yourself. So you can, stress doesn't change our default in terms of what our work preferences are and our culture types, but it can change your reaction to things so that you would act differently than you normally would. So if you see someone who's doing things like way different or at a heightened level from what they normally would, probably they're super stressed out. And if that's the case, the best thing to do first is to just whoa them up and say, hey, can I help you? How's your day going? If you say you seem stressed out, that really ticks people off. So maybe don't start with that one. If I want to have a good engagement or like a good solid argument with my boyfriend, I start with, oh, you seem stressed out. Works every time. So don't use that one first unless you want to get in an argument. Rachel loves doing laundry. Well, as soon as all this is over, you can come to my house and do laundry every week, 3 times a week. Okay, do we want to change how we react to different culture types during a crisis versus everyday life? Nice nails, by the way. Thank you. I got them done like 3 weeks ago. They're getting pretty shaggy, but that's just how it's going to be. I think the short answer, Corey, is no. We don't want to change how we interact with people based on their culture types. The longer answer is no, but in a state of major change. So this is a big, huge example, right? We're literally in a global pandemic. This will be the biggest change that pretty much everybody on the planet, with the exception of maybe newborns up to 5-year-olds, hopefully, will ever deal with. So this is an extreme example that is impacting everyone. But if you think about it, there are extreme individual examples that happen for people all of the time, like being terminated, being ripped out of a job, maybe not getting a promotion that you thought for sure you were going to get, having a new person come into your workplace that you don't get along with, and you try and don't know how to handle it, right? So and maybe somebody in your family, so personal things, not personal, not personal, professional examples. Maybe you have a parent that dies. Maybe you have a brother or sister who gets diagnosed with cancer. Maybe it could be good things too. Maybe you get engaged. Maybe you get a new pet. So individually, we have all of these moments, huge moments of change. Some of them are crisis, some of them are happy. But it's important to remember as leaders and colleagues that people are going through all different stages and parts and events in their life at all the time. And so chances are at any given moment, at least one person around you is dealing with some major crisis or happy event that is causing them to act, differently or at a heightened level than they normally would. So right now, our approach to everyone can be not the same, but we can safely assume that everyone has a lot of the same issues at the top of their mind. How they handle them is different, but everybody's kind of thinking about the same thing. It's probably more of a challenge when we don't have a global pandemic for everybody to be worried about, because then everybody's thinking about all the different things that are happening in their life all the time. So it's a good practice to keep your eyes and ears on people's culture types and understand them from where they're at, no matter what's going on around them. And then that heightened sense, if you can tell somebody's acting really strangely, that heightened sense of, oh, well, something's very different with you. It has nothing to do with me, which is a whole nother topic. But you know, how can, and because it doesn't have anything to do with me, I'm not going to take it personally. How can I help you? So I think short answer is no, we don't want to change how we act and interact with our culture types. Okay, let's see. I don't see any other questions. So I think we're done. My outro. Thank you for tuning in to today's training. Don't forget to check out Elevate Rapid City's YouTube page for any that you've already missed. And you can find the upcoming webinars on Elevate Rapid City's Facebook page. Thanks for joining me. It was great to see some familiar names, and I hope that this was helpful and useful. Let me know if you have any questions, and check out our website if you want more information, rosegroupintl.com. Bye.